Live.
Hi, everybody, and my name is Dave Schade. I'm the director of your Alaska Division of Agriculture. So we're coming live here from Juneau at the University of Alaska Mariculture Conference. And so it's been 3 days of learning a lot about mariculture. Oh, yes, a subset of agriculture. With me today, I've got Erik O'Brian, and Erik has been intimately involved in the mariculture, the task force, and things as they've gone along. So we're sitting here. Sorry if you have a little background noise because we're in the auditorium. We're having a lunch break, so we're going to talk to you guys a bit. So Erik, why don't you tell everybody who you are and how you got into this?
Okay, first of all, I think where I come from. So first and foremost, I'm an Alaskan. I grew up in Kodiak. I lived in a rural village, Larsen Bay, on the west side of Kodiak, where I grew up fishing. Instilled a perspective of the ocean and that community and family lifestyle. This fishing I did was set netting. Fast forward a couple of years, I got a job at the Denali Commission. So I am employed by the Denali Commission. The Denali Commission is a federal funding source that delivers grants to rural Alaska. We're kind of unique and special in that way. And I don't think you can disconnect rural and agriculture. And especially if you're bringing fisheries and marine fisheries into that. And so from my professional career, I'm looking at opportunities to grow the economic base and the infrastructure base in rural Alaska. And so that's what I do on a professional base. And then from a personal base, I come from this community fishing background, and it ultimately culminated into becoming an accidental farmer. And in 2015, when people were talking about this brand new mariculture industry, I said, I believe in that. That is a phenomenal idea. How can we push this forward? And they said, well, you need to permit some farms. How do we do that? And the Department of Fish and Game at the time, the State Department of Fish and Game says, we don't know. We're working on an application. And so I was talking with them, and I was talking with communities, and I would do speaking events and talk to people that were interested. And we did a lot of talking. And after 4 or 5 months of talking and a lot of meetings, the regulators called me and said, hey, Erik, didn't work. Nobody applied. And I said, well, that's no good. Let's get a couple of licenses applied for. And so I applied for the first 2 licenses in Alaska. And I did this at the time under a SWAMC, or an economic development group, similar to the federal side, but we're asking for the money in the project, developing the project instead of giving it out. Similar by that sense. We threw in the first 2 applications. We put one in for Larsen Bay, where my fishing operation is, and in Kodiak, where there's a lot more infrastructure. It just makes a lot more sense to develop a new industry like this because of Kodiak's basically infrastructure, people, and connection to the marine economy. It's got all the components of success. So we put these 2 applications in, and those are the first 2 applications in Alaska. They said, good, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. That was just the first step. I didn't really think about this. I don't have a plan after this. We didn't have a plan. However, we did have somebody that wanted to farm in Southeast Alaska. And I said, good, where are your farmers? He goes, nobody turned in an application. We did in Kodiak. And so we convinced Blue Evolution to move their operations out of Southeast Alaska, Sitka and Juneau. Sorry, Southeast. You guys did eventually get there but that very first foray into Kodiak, we convinced the buyer that we had the licenses and we needed to do this in Kodiak. So Blue Evolution moved over to Kodiak. We put them in touch with the NOAA facilities that helped set up the first lab under a CRADA. It's an industry public partnership license. It allowed them to set up and use the facilities. So short version of those NOAA facilities is they've got amazing equipment, and it was in between research projects. So they had the space and the time to build the first hatchery. So they built the hatchery there. Well, then all the science and the infrastructure, and you can see the University of Alaska is a major supporter of this. Well, the University of Alaska Sea Grant has a facility in Kodiak too. And they said, well, we got the Sea Grant, and they've got a facility for, test bed, for pilot process, for processing. Well, that sounds pretty good too. And ultimately that was the first hub of mariculture in Alaska. Today I am not farming because I lost that market. It didn't go fully baked into the arena. Not that the production side wasn't there, but the downstream sales side still wasn't. It's still a problem in Alaska. What are you going to do with all this kelp? We can grow it, but what are you going to do with it? It's something we were talking about just recently.
Yes.
And that kind of bit me, just because Larsen Bay is 12 hours away in a village of 50 people and a 100-year-old fish cannery. A lot of capacity, but not the capacity you need to start a new industry. So ultimately I lost my market. And Like any stubborn fisherman and Alaskan, I said, well, I'm not just going to quit. And so I turned into oysters. So today I'm an oyster farmer.
Okay, great. Great. So I know you've been part of the task force and the foundation in that. So where do you see this going? The governor had a great introduction to the talking about how mariculture is really going to grow and how we're supporting it with the state. So how do you see it growing?
The state needs to come together right now. And mariculture, unlike fisheries, is not zero sum. Fisheries is well managed. That's a great thing. I'm very, very proud of being part of a well-managed fisheries. But another way to say that is we utilize all the available resources. There's no more to make.
Right.
We've utilized it all. It's fully managed, 100% utilization, meaning for fisheries to grow, for me to catch more fish, I either need to buy more assets, work harder, or somehow take from what you were going to catch.
Right.
Maybe you just retire, so it's not a direct take. It's a transition, but it's still fully utilized.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't created any more fish if I catch more fish.
Right.
Because someone else catches less fish. That is not the case with mariculture. Mariculture is additive.
Right.
We have a carrying capacity. And let me tell you, that carrying capacity has got to be 1 million times bigger than our current commercial fish. It's a $5 billion industry. So the technical carrying capacity is, carefully stated, unlimited.
Right.
Now the market capacity is not, and the social capacity is not.
Right.
Just technically,
right.
We can grow more. We just have to figure out how to do it within the economics and the social capacity. That's a bit of a deeper story than we'll have right now,
right.
But we can work together. And so what I would really like to see is the state of Alaska come together. And what is limited is the funds to set up new operations, primarily value-added processing. It's easy to manage a system in the water, growing kelp, growing oysters, growing other stuff. That part is relatively easy. But the biological processes that you control the seed, not so easy.
Right.
And especially the value-added processes for making kelp. Now we can also sell oysters quite easily. That's why I moved into oysters. It was a simpler process, especially in the downstream. I like oysters, you like oysters. I can give you an oyster, you can eat that oyster. It's very simple. But scalability is a whole nother option. Now, if we wanted to start shipping millions of oysters as an export market, we need the state of Alaska, we need partnerships, we need the university, we need planning. And so to your question, what would we do to grow this industry? And I would really like to see the state come together a little bit. And there's still too many internal conflicts because of a mindset that it's zero sum. And it is zero sum in the fact that there's limited resources to do the production systems, do the hatchery, do the lab work. So we need grants, and there's an inherent conflict around grants. There's a couple of really, really big grants out there. And I would love to see the whole state of Alaska come together and put together a really good application, knowing that it wouldn't be perfect.
Right.
Because we can do good. We can really do good. We could win it good.
Yeah.
And I think what we'll do is we'll launch an industry. And that industry, I think, starts with kelp because of the dynamics and how quickly it grows and how what it could mean for community infrastructure, processing, and just the volume and scale. And then that would roll right into oysters, the next obvious one to scale. There's other species out there that are less obvious but exciting right behind it. Sea cucumbers, other types of bivalves, crustaceans, crabs, shrimps. I mean, in 30 years, I would be surprised if Alaska is not having a controlled production system for, say, shrimp, or something like that. Alaska used to be full of shrimp. We used to have a massive shrimp industry. We still have shrimp in Southeast Alaska. Most of the rest of the state, we don't have it. It was a massive, massive fishery in the Gulf of Alaska in the 70s.
Right.
We could maybe bring some of that back. And what that means is bringing back sustainable economic and industrial activity and a higher quality of life for our coastal residents, which comes back to my story at the Denali Commission. So my professional career, I'm looking at investments in rural Alaska and create better quality of life and opportunity for people. That's our mission at the commission.
Right. And
so this work directly aligns, and it's something I'm passionate about because it does have some historical backing to where I come from.
Right. This is great. And, and as you know, this has been kind of new for the group here, for me, as the director of the Division of Ag, having an active role in telling people that we've already been marketing for many years. We've already got about $1 million in ag loans out for mariculture, and everybody's like, what? It's like, so it's time for us to come out and toot our horn a little bit and say, hey, we've been actively involved for quite a while, there's a food show here in Oregon next week, and Barnacle Seafoods from Juneau will be there at the Alaska booth and have their own. So, I mean, these industries are really growing.
Yeah.
So John, I forgot to tell everybody that if you got a question, you can put it on chat. So if you got a few quick questions, we're going to go eat here in a minute, and we actually get to try some new product that was developed with Taco Loco under a specialty crop grant. So I'm pretty excited to go test some of the work that's been done over the last couple of years. So John, do we have anything?
No questions at the moment, but since you just now invited them to ask them, do you guys have anything to discuss just for a couple of minutes to give them a chance to type any if they do?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that, and I hadn't given the shout out to the university. They have really done an excellent job here. You've got all three campuses. You got people from around. We've talked with people from Fish and Game. We've talked with people from NOAA, from nonprofits, from the tribes. I think the one thing that I'm really excited about is the broad range and scope of all the communities coming together and talking about issues that, frankly, we're all addressing, right? How do we deal with the climate? How do we deal with food security? How do we deal with the supply chain issues we've been dealing with?
Right.
So
it takes a village. That's a statement. It takes a village. Essentially, that means we've all got our specialties, right? We can all play a little role. As much capacity as the Department of Agriculture, they can't move this industry forward. As much capacity as the university has, they can't move this industry forward. Industry people, someone that became an accidental oyster farmer alone can't drive this industry, but we can all
together
do our parts and pieces, and together we absolutely can. And I believe that Alaska is going to be an amazing powerhouse in this field. We're not even on the global list right now. It's topped out by Asian countries, China far and above the most. But I think that in a decade, I think Alaska is going to start to show up on those lists. If we can pull together in a best case scenario, we could be on that list much sooner than we think.
I totally agree. And the one thing that Alaska has that everybody agrees and we're looking at and starting to do the science on is how clean we are. And I mean, the cold water, the cleanliness, but it also leads to some questions that we're going to say, a lot of the feed products, which I'm excited about, developing animal feed out of the kelp because it has some really good probiotic tendencies, reduces methane in beef cattle. Those environmental benefits are there, but it's on warm water kelp. And we have to go get that science and prove our cold water varieties do it. I don't see why not. I'm a farm boy. I'm like, well, a plant's a plant. But, we've got to show the buyers that we've got clean product, that it works as well. And, but we can say, hey, we're made in USA. We're making it here. We got folks from Washington State here. We collaborate with our other Western Coast states. I mean, the collaboration is not just in-state, it's national. Yeah. And I get pretty excited about some of the opportunities I think we've been talking about to lead some national level research to see where we go with this, because we remind everybody we have the 34,000 miles of coastline.
Right. We can be a leader. We can absolutely be a leader. Alaska can lead in many of these metrics. And one of the things I like about our maritime economy, as you're pointing out, this coastline that we have, it's a competitive advantage for Alaska. You can't do what you can do in Alaska and California, Washington, Oregon, Gulf, East Coast. There's just too many people and not enough coastline. And our coastline is unique. It's craggy and fjords and bays and critical infrastructure communities that are sparsely populated, but in critical key locations 12 hours apart. Alaska has an absolute competitive advantage in this space.
Well, and the other thing I've learned about Alaska's mariculture is different regions have different products in different markets. So working together, we actually are building everybody up. So, it's they were using the tide rises all boats. Man, that is a really, in this industry, a very good thing to say, because really, and in Alaska, traditional agriculture, I say the market is so big, it's so open, everybody can grow more. Yeah. Everybody can sell more. In fact, we go from, on the international markets, people come in and we got a pickup load to sell and they want a 747 full. And I'm like, we just can't connect. So we definitely got to do this. So John, did we have any questions?
Nope, still no questions. So
All right. Well, with that, guys, we're getting hungry. We're going to go eat. So, Eric, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
coming
Director. I
by.
appreciate it.
You've been a great guy to work with for the last couple of years, through the Dowling Commission and yourself in your personal capacity. So, as fellow farmers, we can definitely commiserate.
We can stick together.
So, thanks, everybody. Until next week, take care.